Artists, today we are going to continue with our autumn and fall theme. That's the big idea behind our artwork this week, and we are going to be making a picture of a tree. The first thing you need to do is take your crayon and write your name on the corner of your paper. That way we know who the artist is. On the other corner, I want you to write your class code. This will help Miss Lee keep your art together in one class so I don't get them mixed up and give it to the wrong student. So in the other corner where your name is, you're going to write K for kindergarten and then the first letter of your teacher's name. So if your teacher is Mrs. Strite, you're going to write K for kindergarten and S for Mrs. Strite. And the first thing I want to do is I'm going to think about what's going to be on the ground, and that's probably going to be some leaves or some grass, and I'm going to paint that part first. Now remember, when you're using our tempera cakes, you're going to take your wet paintbrush and you're going to swirl it around the paint. I'm going to hold it close so you can see. I'm going to swirl it around, and you might even see little bubbles forming, but we're just tickling that paint, making sure that our paintbrush is still nice and pointed like a ballerina's tippy toe. So I'm swirling it around. Now I'm going to make some grass, and I'm just going to dab my paintbrush on the bottom of my paper. I'm not squishing my paintbrush. When I see artists do this to their paintbrush, oh, that ruins my paintbrush. Look, it's already starting to get ruined. I'm going to clean my brush again, and I'm going to try to get that paintbrush nice and pointed. So I'm just wiping it on my newspaper, and you'll see I've made it into a nice pointy paintbrush. That's how we want them to stay. So I'm going to continue adding some grass. So when we repeat lines and shapes in an artwork, we can create something called texture.
Texture is the way something feels. We'll talk more about that this year.
Now, not all the grass is green anymore. It's starting to look a little yellow and even some orange spots. So I'm going to take some of my yellow paint. Remember, I'm just swirling and tickling my yellow paint. I'm not squishing my paintbrush. I'm keeping my paintbrush nice and pointed. And I'm going to add in some yellow right over my green. You're going to notice that the colors might mix a little, and you might create a new kind of green, a yellow green. When I'm washing my paintbrush, I'm swirling it around the water. I'm not jamming my paintbrush down. I'm swirling it around, and when I pick it up and wipe it off the side of the bowl, I should still see that my paintbrush is nice and pointed, like a ballerina's tippy toe. If you need to, you could even wipe it on your newspaper if it's too wet. I'm taking my paintbrush now, and I'm tickling my black paint. I'm going to add a little bit more water. I don't want my paintbrush to be dripping wet for my tree picture because I just need a nice thin layer of paint on my brush. And now I'm going to paint right over some of the grass that I've painted. I'm going to draw a line or paint a line. Now, if you've ever seen a picture of a tree, you'll see that the tree trunks of a tree are the thickest part of the tree. So I'm going to actually make my line thicker by painting right next to it to make more of a rectangle shape. Now, I want you to think of the letter Y for our tree, because we're going to use that letter Y, and this is what I call my Y tree. Trees usually start with the trunk and then they branch off into a letter Y shape. So I'm going to make a short letter Y. You see how that makes kind of like an upside down triangle there, or even maybe a letter V there. And I have created a Y. Now, as I add more branches, I'm going to take this branch here and turn that into a letter Y. I turn that into a letter Y by adding two diagonal lines. Now there's a little Y on top of a bigger Y. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. And then I'm going to add another little Y on top of those Y's. And I'm going to continue doing that until I fill the top of my tree with all of these little Y branches. You might find that some of your painting is already dried, which is great because if your tree branch is dry, then you should be able to start adding some leaves. Now, when we are looking at our fall trees, they are warm colors. And warm colors are colors that you see in a fire or on autumn trees, which are red, orange, and yellow. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clean my paintbrush. Wipe a bit of it off the side of my bowl. Never tap your paintbrush. When you do that, it splatters, and that's not what you want on your painting, and I'm pretty sure your neighbor doesn't want you to be splattering on their painting. So please wipe your paintbrush off the side of the bowl. And now I'm going to tickle my red paint. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did for my grass. I'm just going to make little dabs of the paintbrush right over my branches. This is going to create a texture. Texture is the way something feels. And if we have lots of little shapes and lots of little lines, it starts making our imagination think that this tree has a feeling to it. And I can even go right off the branches because I'm going to be using my imagination that the branches or the leaves are hanging off of even tinier branches that you might not be able to see. All right, well, I have some red leaves. Now I'm going to go into my orange because orange is a warm color too. And it's a color that I see in our autumn trees. I'm also going to add some orange leaves right on top. Pull this down. Now, if you have your newspaper under, you can go right off the paper. If you wanted to, you could even show that some of the leaves have fallen on the ground, so you can make some of those textures on the ground too. All right, and now I've created a beautiful autumn tree.